it was the middle of summer when I got the call. The kind of summer we get up here short, a little cold even in July, cicadas screaming like they're being paid by the hour. I was at my desk finishing paperwork on a closed case, drowning in the kind of tedium that makes you almost grateful for whatever distraction the phone has to offer. It rang, and it was a friend of mine, another private investigator, working out of a town about 5 hours south of me. We small-talked for a minute. Then he got quiet, in that way people get right before they ask you for something. He told me he'd picked up a missing persons case. A boy, 4 years old. Parents divorced a couple years back. Dad had full custody. Mom was living somewhere in my area. The kid had been gone for about a week. Police had already come up empty. A week is the point where you stop hoping and start preparing yourself. Everybody in this line of work knows that, even if nobody says it out loud. My buddy had managed to track down a couple of witnesses, people who'd seen the boy get into an olive green SUV with a woman. Early 30s, average build, long brown hair. Nobody got the plate. The father told police he'd left the kid alone for half an hour to grab groceries. I remember sitting there thinking that detail over for a second too long. Why didn't he just bring the kid along? I caught myself almost suspecting him before reminding myself that people do stupid, ordinary things all the time, and that grief has a brutal way of magnifying every small mistake into something that looks deliberate in hindsight. I can't imagine carrying that. The description matched a lot of women, but one in particular stood out: the boy's mother. She had a cabin out past the tree line that she'd disappeared for days at a time, never telling her ex-husband. When she was home, she was either asleep or gone. My friend wanted to split the case. He had leads to chase on his end. He wanted me to go check the cabin. I said yes before I really thought about it. It looked clean, open, and shut. He sent me her address and a photo of her and the boy, and I packed up and headed out. I want to say something about these forests, because if you haven't been up here, you don't understand the particular flavor of wrong they carry. They're beautiful, genuinely, almost cruelly beautiful. Streams cut through granite like something out of a postcard. The pines stand 100 feet tall. Sunlight comes down through the canopy in these soft, broken shafts, and I hate every second I spend in them. It always feels staged to me, like the forest is putting on a show specifically to distract you from whatever's actually happening, just past the edge of what you can see. The GPS gave up on me about 20 minutes in. Of course it did. This address wasn't going to be on any map worth trusting, but eventually I found the gravel road breaking off through a wall of bark, and I turned down it. The gravel turned to dirt, the light dimmed fast, swallowed by the canopy, and the gap behind me where I had entered shrank and vanished in my mirror. I drove slow. The trees seemed close, closer than they should have been on a road this wide, and I remember catching myself glancing at them, trying to figure out what was bothering me about them, and not landing on an answer. I saw the cabin's silhouette eventually, far off through the trunks, and pulled over before I got close enough to be seen from a window. I'm not in the business of advertising my presence on a job. I got out, camera in hand, and started walking the rest of the way on foot. There was a gate at the edge of a clearing, wooden, half-rotted, no fence attached to either side of it, so its only real function seemed to be holding up a faded no trespassing sign that nobody bothered enforcing. Past it sat the cabin, smaller than I expected, but in decent shape, almost modern looking against the rough timber around it. In front of it, a flattened patch of grass worn down by tire tracks that led straight back to the gate. And parked dead center on that grass, an olive green SUV. My stomach did this weird double take, equal parts relief and dread. The kind of feeling you get when a case suddenly clicks into place and you're not entirely sure you wanted it to. I raised the camera, zoomed on the plate, snapped a photo, panned up to the cabin, snapped another. That's when I noticed the front door was wide open. Had been the whole time. I went still. The air around me dropped a few degrees, or it felt like it did. That's probably just adrenaline lying to your skin. And then I heard it, humming, soft, a woman's voice, drifting out from somewhere inside the cabin, slow and meandering. The kind of tune you'd hum to a child half asleep. It had this odd quality to it, though every so often it would catch, stutter, skip, like a breath running out mid-note. I told myself I'd just take one look, just confirm what I was seeing, and get back to the car. That's the lie you tell yourself right before you do the dumbest thing of the day. My legs moved before my brain fully signed off on it. Grass crunched under my boots. The cabin loomed taller the closer I got, and slowly, through that open doorway, the inside came into view. I stopped walking entirely. The floor was covered in branches. Not sticks, not fallen debris long, deliberately cut tree limbs, stripped and laid across the floorboards in a dense, unbroken mat, edge to edge, wall to wall. My eyes followed them almost on instinct, tracing a path toward the only piece of furniture in the room, a small white coffee table, and on top of it, a CD player. And that's when I understood why the humming kept skipping. I didn't stay long enough to think about it. The trees behind me felt like they were leaning in, the ground felt unsteady, and I just ran. Back through the gate, into my car, doors locked, key in the ignition before I'd even fully sat down. I put it in reverse and got out of there as fast as the dirt road would let me. That place was wrong in a way I still can't fully put words to. I called the police the second I had signal. Wasn't going back in there myself, but I wasn't going to let it just sit either. They searched the cabin top to bottom. Found exactly what I'd found: the branches, the table, the CD player, and nothing else. No fingerprints, no residue. The SUV was registered to her, plate confirmed, but the vehicle itself was practically spotless, like it had just rolled off a lot. Nobody ever went back to that cabin. My friend's leads dried up one by one, and not long after, the boy's mother was reported missing too. We never found any of them. If I had to guess, and it's only a guess, there's no evidence to back most of it, I'd say she took her son up there, gathered whatever mattered most to her, and staged that whole scene to throw off anyone who came looking. Maybe she got him out of town some other way. Or maybe they walked into those trees and never walked back out. If it's the second one, I think they're both still out there. I get a lot of calls from paranoid spouses. Most of them are nothing somebody convinced their husband's working late one too many nights, somebody who found a receipt they didn't like. I take almost all of those cases anyway, because business is business, and every so often the paranoia turns out to be earned. This one had an explanation in the end, a reasonable one even. But it's the case that taught me to be a little more careful about what I agree to walk into. About 2 years back, I got a cold call from an older man. First thing he did was double-check he'd dialed the right number, like he didn't quite trust his own hands to have gotten it right. Then he launched straight into it. His wife was plotting against him, he said. Said she was going to take him out. I tried to walk him down, get him to slow up. Told him to come into the office so we could talk it through over coffee, figure out if there was even a case here worth taking. He wasn't having any of that. Said he needed to see me right away. He showed up a couple hours later, late 50s, maybe early 60s, and visibly rattled hands a little unsteady. Eyes doing this thing where they kept darting to the window like he expected someone to be standing there. By the time we sat down, he'd calmed some, but the fear hadn't left him, just gone quieter. He told me his wife had been attending some kind of book club with a few other older women from the neighborhood. He was convinced they were after him, and then he told me the part that actually got my attention. Every morning, around 4 a.m., he said he was jolted awake by an unnatural noise, dogs, barking, growling, frantic, like every dog on the block had lost its mind at once. And every time it happened, he'd open his eyes to find his wife standing in the bedroom doorway, not moving. Beside her, 2 more elderly women, ones he recognized from her book club, also not moving, just standing there, watching him. The unsettling part, the part that made the hair on my arm stand up just hearing him describe it, was that his wife was still in the bed next to him the entire time. Asleep, he said as long as he stayed still, they stayed still. The moment he made any noticeable movement, they'd shuffle off before he could even get his glasses on for a clearer look. A few times he'd gotten up to check afterward and found the back door standing open. Nothing else disturbed, nothing missing. My first instinct was sleep paralysis. That's a real, well-documented thing, and it explains a lot of cases that sound like this one on the surface. But sleep paralysis doesn't open doors, and it doesn't let you walk freely the second it lifts. I asked if he had a carbon monoxide detector in the bedroom. He did. Never gone off. I took down his address, his schedule, his wife's schedule, where the book club met, got photos of his wife and her friends, and agreed to take the case. That night, I parked down the street from his house, angled so I had a clean line on both the front door and the gate into the backyard. Set up 2 cameras, turned on a podcast to kill the silence, because that street, after dark, had this absolute stillness to it. No traffic, no porch lights, just dim country street lamps doing their best against a wall of black. It felt less like a quiet neighborhood and more like the whole town had quietly emptied out and forgotten to tell me. The podcast finished a while before anything happened, and I remember turning off the music that followed it too. Didn't want anything filling that silence except whatever was actually going to fill it. 3:30 a.m. On the dot, dogs started barking. Not one dog, a whole chorus of them. Every house on the block apparently going off in this strange unified rhythm, loud enough that it nearly put me through the roof of my own car. And in my rear view, I caught movement. 3 figures moving slow down the sidewalk. 2 small, hunched shapes and a third between them, taller, stiffer, all of them in white dresses. They came into view so suddenly it almost didn't register as real motion, more like they'd simply appeared. My windows were tinted enough that they wouldn't notice me, but I sat dead still anyway, barely breathing, terrified one of them might glance over as they passed. And as they got closer, I understood what I was actually looking at. It wasn't 3 women. It was 2 elderly women, dragging a mannequin between them, rigid, stark white, dressed to resemble the wife. Its feet scraped along the pavement with this awful, dry, dragging sound as they hauled it past my car. I got the camera up and started shooting stills first, then video. They turned down his driveway. One of them produced a key, let themselves through the back gate, and disappeared from sight, mannequin in tow. I checked the footage to make sure it was usable, then sat there for a second trying to process what I was looking at. Whatever was going on, it didn't seem like an active threat, more like a routine, something the women had been doing for a while, half a wandering ritual. But I wasn't about to just sit there and let it play out unsupervised. I called the man's phone. A few minutes later, the women came shuffling back out, mannequin dragging along behind them, and disappeared down the street the way they'd come. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. When I showed him the photos the next day, he didn't believe it at first. Then he went pale. And then, instead of horror, he just let out this long, shaking sigh of relief, tears running down his face. He apologized not to me, to his absent wife for ever doubting her. I found out later, secondhand, that the 2 women had been struggling with dementia for some time. His wife had apparently given one of them a spare key in case they ever wanted to drop by. I still don't fully understand the reasoning there, but I suppose it makes a certain kind of sad sense if you remember what it's like to be old and forgotten by most of the world. Both women ended up somewhere they could be properly looked after. The husband and wife made up without much trouble. It's one of the rare cases that ended clean. Doesn't make those 4 a.m. footsteps any less wrong in the moment, though. Outside of domestic cases, a lot of my work comes from small businesses' fraud checks, background screenings on new hires, the occasional employee they suspect of skipping shifts. One of my regular clients is a little antique shop tucked into one of the quieter corners of town, the kind of place that survives more on nostalgia than foot traffic. The couple who runs it doesn't get many customers, but they're thorough as hell about the few staff they hire. It was mid-autumn, that short window where a handful of trees up here actually bother turning orange before the cold settles in for good. I was sitting in the Tim Hortons under one of them, coffee in hand, watching the door for the couple to arrive. We'd worked together enough times that we skipped the small talk and went straight to business. They'd recently hired someone to cover night shifts. I never understood why they barely got customers during the day, let alone after dark, but it wasn't my place to question their business model. I'd already run a background check on the kid when they first brought him on. Clean record, quiet life, went to school, came home, took the occasional walk or grocery run, nothing red flagged. Now they wanted me to sit outside the shop on his first solo night shift, make sure he wasn't slacking off. I suggested a security camera instead, cheaper, more reliable. I'd even install it for them. They weren't interested. Then they asked for a mystery shopper run too. Go in near the end of his shift, buy something, see how he handled a customer. I'd been inside that shop a handful of times before, and every visit left me trying to think of excuses not to go back. I almost turned this one down for that reason alone. But money's money, and I was a little tight that month, so I took it. I parked down the street before he arrived, far enough that I couldn't be seen from behind the counter, which also meant I couldn't see him, but there was only one door in or out, so I'd know either way. He pulled up around 11:30, swapped shifts with the couple, and they headed home for the night. From the outside, the place looked perfectly ordinary. Small, cramped, low budget, the kind of mom-and-pop storefront you'd walk past without a second glance. One door. A rickety wooden staircase beside it led up to a storage room that, as far as I knew, nobody used. Even sitting in my car, watching the chipped blue paint around that doorway, I could feel why I never liked hanging around this place. There's a particular loneliness that radiates off it, not quiet, exactly, more like sorrow with nowhere left to go. Inside, dim yellow lights spilled out into the night, like the shop was the only thing still awake for miles. Hours passed. The door never opened, not for him, not for any customer. Shadows in the trees behind the shop kept playing tricks on me, the kind your mind manufactures out of boredom and bad lighting. Eventually, his shift wound down, and I got out, crossed the empty street, cold air biting at my face, and pushed the door open. A small bell chimed above me. The inside hit me immediately, that same wrongness I associate with the forest, just compressed into a smaller, dustier space. Shelves crammed with ornaments, native carvings sitting crooked on warped floorboards, porcelain dolls staring out from the clutter with that particular dead-eyed stillness only old dolls manage. A clock somewhere in the back, ticking with more weight than a clock should have. Nobody was behind the counter. I stood there for a second, feeling time stretch out strangely. I checked the aisles. No one hiding, no other exits. The bell hadn't rung since he'd arrived. I'd have heard it from the car. My breathing picked up before I consciously noticed it had. A small wooden dog sat on the counter, its black painted eyes somehow making the silence feel worse. Then the floor creaked. Above me, I turned toward the staircase. Another creak. Then another slow, deliberate, the unmistakable weight of a boot pressing into old wood again and again, getting closer to the top of the stairs from somewhere further back. Dust sifted down from the ceiling with each step. There was someone upstairs. I backed toward the door, fumbling behind me for the handle, refusing to take my eyes off the staircase the whole way. There's that thought again, the one about things not existing properly once you stop watching them. I didn't want to find out what happened the second I turned my back on whatever was up there. I got the door open, stepped out into the cold, and pulled it shut behind me. The night air felt almost merciful after that. Legally, I had no business going into that storage room. I hadn't been given permission, and walking in uninvited would have been trespassing on private property, case or no case. But something up there wasn't right, and I couldn't just leave it. I pulled my phone out, flicked on the flashlight, and aimed it up the staircase. A jack-in-the-box sat at the top step, lid open, its cloth figure frozen mid-spring, grin stretched wide in that worn, lopsided way old toys get. It looked like it had been positioned there, watching the stairs. That was enough for me. I went straight for my car, checked the back seat out of habit before climbing in, and sat there trying to talk myself down. I wasn't going up those stairs, but I also wasn't leaving until I knew who'd come down them. A few minutes later, the shop door opened, and the kid walked out, locking up behind him like nothing had happened. I got out and approached him before I'd really decided to, my head full of questions I didn't know how to ask yet. I told him I'd woken up late and rushed over because there was something I'd had my eye on. Asked if I could grab it quick before he finished closing. He looked a little thrown by the timing, but he let me back in. I watched him as he rang me up. Nothing about him read as off. No shake in his voice, no nervous glances toward the staircase. He was, if anything, pretty likable, chatted easily, asked how my night was going. I bought the little wooden dog off the counter and left. I spent the drive home trying to piece together a theory, and the best I could come up with was this. Maybe he'd been hiding behind the counter when I first walked in startled, maybe planning to nick something from the storage room before his shift ended and slipped upstairs while I was checking the rest of the shop. Maybe once he heard me leave for my car, he came back down and out the front, timing it to look like he was just finishing up. It doesn't hold together, though. The bell never rang for him to sneak out. I never heard him come down before I left, and it doesn't explain the jack-in-the-box sitting there at the top of those stairs like it had been arranged for someone to find. I told the couple I'd heard footsteps upstairs and that they should keep an eye on their storage room. They didn't ask any follow-up questions, just nodded, like it wasn't the first time they'd heard something like that about the place. Whatever's living in that building, I really hope I never have a reason to go back.